It's Toronto's podcast on the Canada's Podcast Network.
Today, I'd like to introduce you to Mark Doble. Mark is a lawyer and a software developer with a passion for leveraging software to make the law more affordable and more understandable. He received his JD from Queen's University, and his new venture, Alexsei, is using artificial intelligence to transform the practice of law in a pretty dramatic fashion. In a previous life, Mark was a professional cross-country skier and coach. Mark also holds a patent for snow gliding devices that allows for non-linear flex in alpine and cross-country skis. So Mark, welcome to Canada's podcast.
Thanks, Phil.
Mark, let's dive right into it and say, tell us a bit about yourself, your story, and where you are today, your company as it exists today.
Yeah, for sure. So we are a smallish team of about 10 people, and we're a legal technology company. So we're combining brilliant machine learning technologies, artificial intelligence with brilliant lawyers to provide really high quality answers to our clients' legal questions. And all of our clients are lawyers and other law firms.
Okay. So why aren't you working as a lawyer? You got a JD from Queen's. What are you doing in technology?
Yeah. Well, so I during law school, I had quite a bit of interest in software and spent half of my time reading, which probably should have been all of my time, but the other half was spent building little things on the side and really getting into the weeds in software and in particular machine learning. And I just saw that the impact that this technology was going to have on the law was profound. And as somebody just starting out in the profession, it was something I really wanted to be in. It really excited me. I love the law. I love studying the law, reading about the law. But it was something about artificial intelligence and software in particular, the ability to scale software, that was really exciting for me.
Are you wired differently? I mean, I think entrepreneurs are wired differently. Is there something about you, Mark?
Well, it's probably the kind of question you should ask my wife and friends, but I think what they might say, what my wife might say is, I'm fairly ordinary. But I do think that I'm less content with status quo than most people. I'm less content with the daily grind, working for somebody else, completing tasks and to-do lists.
I'm always interested in, you dive, yes, you saw an opportunity, okay, but you dive into this with no sense of income or why did you do that? I mean, how did you sort of go? How did you sort of come up, and start swimming? Because that's always the big thing for entrepreneurs. It's really, people have lots of ideas, but it's taking that big dive off the edge. And coming up for air or not, okay?
Well, it is one of the most difficult things, if not the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life, no doubt. But at the same time, while it might have appeared very risky, very uncertain, it seemed like at the time, and still seems like looking back, the most rational thing I could have done. And I just had to do it. And there was really no other option. And it was the idea of building capital in a company, building an asset with value that if I'm successful, if we're successful in this company, outlives my time working on the company. The idea of that, which you only really get that by starting a company. That was
that's profound. Yeah, let's move on to more where we are in Toronto, kind of thing. Well, actually, I'm in Hamilton, but you're in Toronto, so we're in the general area, basically.
Yep.
What are the benefits of doing business around here? I mean, why here?
Yeah, well, it's.
I mean, you told me earlier on when we were talking that you kicked off in Thunder Bay. Why not stay in Thunder Bay?
Yeah. Well, it's not an easy question to answer, because on the one hand, the internet allows you to be anywhere, and most of my work is just accessing the internet, communicating with people across the internet. And oftentimes I'm at the office, and there's very few physical interactions with other people. And so some days I'm like, yeah, why are we here in Toronto? It's the cost of living is high, but it's the proximity to other people that is really important in my view. We might not have to be in Toronto every day, Monday through Friday, every week of the year, but there's so much innovation happening in Toronto that it really is not just a hub for Canada, but a hub for the world, especially in machine learning and AI. It's exceptional.
Definitely is. And that's a good reason. I mean, definitely a good reason. But what are some of the issues? There's 10 of you there. You said, what are some of the issues that your team has, in the area?
Some of the issues. Well, we're still, even though there's 10 of us, we're largely a remote team. We have a full-time employee in Vancouver. We have full-time employee in Montreal. We're quite distributed, and we've had to build processes and ways of accommodating for a distributed team. And there's a lot of value, I think, that comes from that. And so the main downside is cost of living and cost of operating a business in Toronto. That it's really expensive, but it's expensive because there's lots of value that comes from being here.
So this is more about the sort of the process. I think being an entrepreneur is recognized on you have to be fairly creative, fairly innovative to succeed in entrepreneurship. So some of our best ideas come, where we least expect them. How do you disconnect? How do you recharge? Is there somewhere special you go to? Is there some process that Mark's kind of evolved that works for him? I think it's really good to talk about it because,
Sure.
People can learn from that.
Yeah, really, for me, it's something that with my wife and my son and my extended family, it's spending time with them and learning how to do that properly while completely disconnected. In the first year of the company, it was really difficult, and we had to figure out ways to do that, and are still really figuring it out. It's so easy to be connected all the time, but having time with them is a way for me to recharge, so that the best ideas have come from absolutely, like you said, surprising locations and at surprising times. But I think it really is, and it's something I've thought a lot about because we are in the business of trying to constantly invent new things. We're a technology company, and the thing that I hear a lot of other people talk about, and I keep coming back to, is that the best ideas, most people do not think that they're a good idea at the beginning, and so there is a contrarian idea that's ultimately what leads to success. It starts off as this contrarian idea, and it's rare that that's not the case. And so if you imagine Airbnb, for example, very contrarian idea early on. Very few people were signing up to be hosts or staying in a host's house. And the early business developers at Airbnb, they had to spend all this time trying to convince other people of their contrarian idea that it was true. And so you have to have a contrarian idea. It has to be true. Most contrarian ideas are wrong also. And that's one of the big difficulties. And then it's a matter of convincing the world of this contrarian idea, the truth of this contrarian idea. And that.
What are you most excited about in your business today?
The most exciting thing about our business today is seeing these two worlds of lawyers and machine learning software engineers coming together to build something that has never existed before. And there's been a real slow development, in my view, of legal technology. There's a few examples and successes out there, but nowhere near as many as there should be. And I think in large part it's because they're two totally different cultures, two totally different types of people, ways of thinking that have not interacted anywhere near enough. And that's really what we're seeing come together now. And that's really exciting.
What drives you, what drives you forward? I mean, you hit barriers. We all hit barriers. What takes you around the wall or over the wall, whichever, is there something there that people should know about, that if you didn't have it, you couldn't get around the wall?
Well, I really think it starts, I mean, it's going to be different for every person, but for me, I like to think that I'm fairly rational. I look at things objectively. If there is something we need to fix, I try and fix it. I don't avoid it. But it's also the knowledge that really great companies take a long time to build. And I didn't take a salary for a whole year or slightly over a year, right? And that's not uncommon. Oftentimes it's even more than that. And I can barely say that we're definitely below market salaries now for the founders of the company. And it's just knowing that it takes time, and these things don't happen overnight. And so with that knowledge, believing that is absolutely true, any downs, I know that it's likely there's going to be an up next week or tomorrow maybe, right? And so
What are the top 3 things on your vision board, bucket list, whatever you call it, today? They don't have to be business. I mean, it can be family as well,
So we're so focused on the specific problem that we're solving, and it is a very hard technical problem, but it's a very hard marketing problem also. We're building automation for an industry that has been fairly insular, very well protected. It's highly regulated, and a lot of the people in the industry, a lot of lawyers, especially graduating lawyers, they're concerned about jobs, job replacement, and that's understandable. So we're building automation in this industry that we ultimately think will increase the amount of jobs, although it's very counterintuitive to understand that. And so there's a very hard technical problem, there's a hard marketing problem, and it's trying to solve these problems that is really exciting. I think did I answer your question? I think there was
I think you did.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just thinking in terms of just sort of some experiences that maybe people are listening to, kind of lessons section, as I term it. What do you know now that you wish you knew when you were starting the business?
The biggest lesson for us in the first year was which segment of the market is more likely to adopt this sort of product. And early on, we just said, well, it's a product for all lawyers. And if you're a lawyer, we want to talk to you. And now we know that that was a very bad approach, and that there's subtle differences between various segments of the market, and really understanding those differences between the segments has been really important in terms of how we optimize our sales process, our go-to-market generally. And I, as a first-time entrepreneur, I was not aware of the importance of really understanding the market in far more detail than I thought was important. I'm a lawyer myself. I didn't practice right out of articling. I started this company. And so I thought I had enough information about a lawyer and what they do, and a law firm, and where all the law firms are. And but there was far more information I needed to know, and I needed to study the market far more to better plan a sales strategy. And
so what you're saying is, don't just go in with a good idea. Spend a lot more time, doing analysis, not with paralysis, but pretty damn close. I think.
Absolutely, because it is the convincing people of a contrarian idea that you believe is right. That is really difficult, and you need to become excellent at that, regardless of the technology.
So 2 more lessons. One is more locational thing. What advice would you give an entrepreneur looking to start a business in Toronto? I mean, maybe, and just where to situate yourself. It can be all kinds of things, but lots of people, what could you pass on about, starting a business in Toronto to that?
Yeah, well, the number one thing, it all depends on what you want out of the business. Are you looking to build a lifestyle business where you perhaps have 1 or 2 employees and you have a steady income every year? Or are you looking to build a scalable company? We're in the technology business, the venture scale route, and that's kind of where my head's at, and where the company's at. And that being said, there's one thing that's always true in my view. You have to provide a product or service that people absolutely love and obsess about your customer, obsess about the value you're providing them. And if that's there, you'll have that value returned back to you.
What's the best piece of advice that you've ever received? We've all been mentored by either parents or this, but what's that advice that you carry around with you?
Yeah, I would say a lot of the advice I get is, there are several mentors that I've worked with formally, informally. I do a lot of reading. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and there's a lot that comes from all of that, and I'm trying to pick out. There's a lot of different.
We'll come back to it.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So this is what we term rapid fire things. So just blurt out. Okay.
Okay.
If you weren't doing what you do for work now, what would you be doing instead?
I would have started.
You can't say lawyer. No, you can't say no. Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
I would have started just a different company.
Okay. All right. Okay. What book are you currently reading, listening to, whatever, and what book or books would you recommend to the audience? Obviously with a focus on business and entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Well, Good to Great. I've read a couple times, and I just started rereading it again. Andy Grove's High Output Management, an exceptional book that I would recommend to anybody, especially when just trying to figure out how your organization becomes operationalizable. It's an incredible book.
Okay. Are you a morning or a night person?
Ooh, is there a neither? I think I'm neither.
That's a new one. I think I've not had that response.
I normally stop working. The latest I would work is probably 10:30. I'm normally up at 7.
Okay. Yeah, okay. If you had to pick one word to describe yourself, what would it be, and why?
Oh, man, one persistent.
That's a very common word and theme that we. If you listen to some of our podcasts, you'll find that comes up a lot.
And the reason I picked that, honestly, is because I think my wife said that to me the other day, and that's why. Okay, well, maybe
well, that's a good reason.
Yeah.
What's keeping you up at night these days, if anything?
I have a 2-year-old son who's started temper tantrums, and so he's the main reason. If I'm up at night, it's him.
Yeah. What's your favorite place in the world?
Wherever my family is. No, it doesn't really, I'm more focused on the people that I'm around as opposed to a specific location.
This is sort of the routine question. What are the 3 non-negotiables that have to happen in your morning or evening routine? Or not. If you don't have one, maybe you don't have it.
In the morning, coffee. I probably haven't, there hasn't been a day where I haven't had coffee in at least a decade. And I think that's probably the only thing.
Okay. So this one, if this is what I ask everybody. Okay. There's a small tropical island in the middle of the ocean with only one phone booth and no internet. We drop you off there with no technology. At any time, you can use the phone booth on the island to call the boat back, and we'll come and pick you up. How long would you last before making that call, and what would you do until then?
Am I missing something? I don't see a reason why I would not make the call right away. I would be concerned for my health.
That's fine. That's a good one.
Yeah. I can see maybe some people want to hang out on the island for a little bit.
Yours is a common response. Other one is we'll stay for a few days, or I'll stay.
As soon as you said no internet, I said, no, I need out of this situation.
Okay, Mark. Look, we're coming to the end here, but thank you for the interview. Where can our listeners find you online? And because they listen to this, people sometimes want to connect.
Yeah, you can just email me is probably the best bet, Mark with a K at alexsei.com, and that's Alex, ALEXSEI.com. And yeah, that's the best spot to get a hold of me. Okay.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for coming on to Canada's podcast. It's been really nice meeting you, and I'm sure there's some gems in there that our listeners will love. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Really appreciate it, and I'll be certain to subscribe, and you can count me as another one of your listeners.